The Yuba County Five were a group of young men from Yuba County, California, United States, each with mild intellectual disabilities or psychiatric conditions, who were reported missing after attending a college basketball game at California State University in Chico City on the night of February 24, 1978. Gary Mathias, 25, a U.S. Army soldier stationed in West Germany, developed drug problems and schizophrenia. After being discharged, he returned to Marysville, and by 1978, Gary worked in his stepfather's gardening business. He was close friends with four men with intellectual disabilities. They were Bill Sterling, 29, Jackie Hewitt, 24, Ted Weiher, 32, and Jack Madruga, 30. Like Gary, all of them lived with their parents. The men loved sports. Their families said that when the five of them got together, it was usually to play a game or to watch one. They played basketball together on a team called the Gateway Gators, a team supported by a local program for people with mental disabilities. On February 25, the Gators were due to play their first game in a week-long tournament sponsored by the Special Olympics. The five men had prepared the night before, some even laying out their uniforms and asking their parents to wake them up on time. They decided to drive to Chico City that same night to watch the UC Davis basketball team in an away game against Chico State. Jack drove the group 50 miles or 80 kilometers north to the Chico State campus in his turquoise and white 1969 Mercury Montego. After the game, the group got back into the car and drove a short distance from Chico State to Bears Market in downtown Chico. There they bought snacks, sodas, and cartons of milk to drink. It was shortly before the store's 10 p.m. closing time. None of the men were seen alive again after that point. At their homes, some of their parents waited up to make sure they returned. When morning came and they had not returned, the police were notified. Police in Butte and Yuba counties began searching along the route the men took to Chico. They found no sign of them, but a few days later, a Plumas National Forest ranger told investigators that he had seen the Mercury parked in the forest along Orville-Quincy Road on February 25. Inside the car, empty wrappers and containers from the food and drinks they had purchased from the store in Chico were present, along with a neatly folded road map of California. The location of the car baffled authorities. It was 70 miles, 110 kilometers, from Chico, far off any direct route to Yuba City or Marysville. None of the men's families could speculate as to why they might have driven up a long and winding dirt road on a winter night deep into a high-elevation remote forest. Jack's parents said he never even been up into the mountains. Bill's father had once taken his son to the area near where the car was found for a fishing weekend. Police were puzzled why the men had abandoned the car. They had reached 4,400 feet in elevation along the road, about where the snow line was at that time of year, just short of where the road was closed for the winter. The car had become stuck in some snow drifts, and there was evidence that the men had tried to spin the wheels to get out of it. The keys were not present, and the fuel gauge indicated the tank was 1/4 full. The car's undercarriage had no dents, gouges or even mud scrapes, not even on its low-hanging muffler, despite having been driven a long distance up a mountain road with many bumps, ruts, and potholes. Either the driver had been extremely careful or it was someone familiar with the road, a familiarity Jack was not known to have. His family said that Jack would not have let someone else drive the car. The car was unlocked and had a window rolled down when it was found. His family indicated it was unlike him to leave the car so unsecured. Efforts to search the vicinity were hampered by a severe snowstorm that day. 2 days later, after searchers and snowcats nearly became lost themselves, further search efforts were called off due to continuing bad weather. No trace of the men was found other than the car. In response to local media coverage of the case, police received several reports of some or all of the men being sighted after they had left Chico. Joseph Shawns of Sacramento told police he wound up spending the night of February 24 to 25 near where the car was found. He had driven up there, where he had a cabin, to check in advance of a weekend ski trip with his family. At 5:30 p.m., about 150 feet up the road, Joseph, too, had gotten stuck in the snow. After failing to free his car, he went back in, keeping the engine running to provide heat. 6 hours later, Joseph saw headlights coming up behind him. Looking out, he saw a car parked behind him, headlights on, with a group of people around it, one of which seemed to him to be a woman holding a baby. He called to the party for help, but they turned their headlights out. Later, he saw more lights from behind him, this time flashlights, that also went out when he called to them. After that, Joseph said at first, he recalled a pickup truck parking 20 feet behind him briefly, and then continuing on down the road. After Joseph's car ran out of gas in the early morning hours, he had to walk 8 miles down the road to a lodge, where the manager drove him back home, passing the abandoned car. The other notable report was from a woman who worked at a store in the small town of Brownsville, 30 miles, 48 kilometers, from where the car had been abandoned. On March 3, the woman, who saw flyers that had been distributed with the men's pictures, told deputies that 4 of them had stopped at the store in a red pickup truck, the day after the disappearance. The store owner corroborated her account. The woman said she immediately realized that the men were not from the area. 2 of the men, whom she identified as Jackie and Bill, were in a telephone booth outside the store, while the other 2 went inside. The store owner, who told investigators that men whom he believed to be Ted and Jackie came in and bought burritos, chocolate milk and soft drinks. Ted's brother told the owner's description of the 2 men's behavior seemed consistent with them. With the evidence not pointing to any clear conclusion about what happened the night the 5 men disappeared, police and the families were not ruling out the possibility that they had met with foul play. On June 4, with most of the snow melted, a group of motorcyclists went to a trailer at a campsite off the road about 19 miles or 31 kilometers from where the car had been found. The front window of the trailer had been broken. When they opened the door, they were overcome by the odor of what turned out to be a decaying body inside. It was later identified as Ted's. Authorities returned to search the Plumas National Forest, following the road between the trailer and the site of the car. The next day, they found remains that were later identified as those of Jack and Bill on opposite sides of the road 11 miles or 18 kilometers from where the car had been. Jack's body had been partially consumed by scavenging animals, only bones remained of Bill, scattered over a small area. Autopsies showed that they both died of hypothermia. 2 days later, as part of one of the other search parties, Jackie's father found his son's backbone under a bush 2 miles northeast of the trailer. His shoes and jeans nearby helped identify the body. The next day, a deputy sheriff found a skull downhill from the bush, 300 feet away, confirmed by dental records later to have been Jackie's. His death, too, was attributed to hypothermia. In an area to the northwest of the trailer, roughly a quarter mile or 400 meters away, searchers found 3 Forest Service blankets and a rusted flashlight by the road. It could not be determined how long those items had been there. Ted's body was on a bed with 8 sheets wrapped around it, including the head. The autopsy showed that he had died of a combination of starvation and hypothermia. Ted had lost nearly half his 200 pounds, 91 kilograms. The growth of his beard suggested he had lived slightly more than 3 months from when he had last shaved. His feet were badly frostbitten, almost gangrenous. No fire had been set in the trailer's fireplace, despite an ample supply of matches and paperback novels to use as kindling. Heavy forestry clothing, which could have kept the men warm, also remained where it had been stored. It also appeared that Ted had not been alone in the trailer, and that Gary and possibly Jackie had also been there. Gary's tennis sneakers were in the trailer. The sheets all over Ted's body also suggested that one of the others had been there with him, as his gangrenous feet would have been in too much pain for him to pull them over his body himself. A dozen food cans from a storage shed outside had been opened and their contents consumed, but a locker in the same shed that held an even greater assortment of dehydrated foods, enough to keep all 5 men fed for a year if that had been necessary, had not even been opened. Similarly, another shed nearby held a gas tank with a valve that, had it been opened, would have fed the trailer's heating system. Investigators still could not completely explain what had led to their deaths. They still had found no explanation for why the men were there, although they learned that Gary had friends in the small town of Forbestown, and police believed it was possible that, in an attempt to visit them on the way back home, the men may have taken a wrong turn near Oroville that put them on the mountain road. For whatever reason, the men had left the car. They had, instead of going back down the road, continued along the road in the direction they were originally going. The day before the men went missing, a Forest Service snowcat had gone along the road in that direction to clear snow off the trailer roof so it would not collapse. It was possible, police believed, that the group had decided to follow the tracks of the snowcat back, through snowdrifts 4 to 6 feet high, to wherever they led, in the belief that shelter was not too far away. Most likely, Jack and Bill died of hypothermia about halfway through the long walk to the trailer, and Jackie soon after. It is assumed that once they found the trailer, the other two broke the window to enter. Since it was locked, they may have believed it was private property and feared arrest for theft if they used anything else they found there. After Ted died, or after Gary thought he had died, he may have decided to try to get back to civilization by different ways, such as walking overland. Pictures of Gary were distributed to mental institutions all over California. However, no trace of him has ever been found. As the decades continue to pass, the hope remains, to find answers, to uncover the truth, and perhaps one day, to bring closure to the family forever waiting for their loved one to return home. So that's all we got about the Yuba County Five, and thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more videos, hit the subscribe button, and if you have something to say, please leave a comment.